Hi guys! So it is finally time for another sketchbook tour video. This is my Illo sketchbook and it was started on May 12th of this year and finished on November 12th, which was completely unintentional. I had no idea that I had actually finished it in exactly 6 months until I was checking the dates to do this video, so that's pretty neat. But let's dive right into the sketchbook. So first and foremost, as I normally have with my sketchbooks, I have some Redbubble stickers. I pretty much just decorated the inside of it with some Redbubble stickers, my own stickers, and some washi tape, and I really like the way it's organized on there. It just ended up working out really well for me. And then we get into the actual drawings of the sketchbook. So this one, I had a lot of mediums in this sketchbook. I used acrylics, watercolor, gouache, colored pencils, Copic markers, inks. A very large variety of supplies actually ended up going into this sketchbook, and I've mentioned before that I kind of had mixed feelings when it came to the Illo sketchbook, and I figure now is as good of a time as any to talk about that. So at the very beginning of the sketchbook, I was immediately turned off by the sketchbook just because paper was so smooth, and I actually haven't worked with a smooth sketchbook in a really long time. Most recently, I've been using a lot of the Canson XL mixed media sketchbooks, which are somewhat textured paper. They're fairly textured, they're not the most textured out there, but it's been a while since I've worked on smooth paper, so right off the bat, that was kind of like a sort of thing for me. And then once I started working with watercolors more and more in the sketchbook, it became very noticeable to me that this paper handles watercolors fairly strange. So this paper itself is not necessarily intended to handle lots of water. It buckles a tiny bit. It's definitely not the worst considering it's not its intended purpose, but the thing about it that really bothered me was sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it would freckle and like the color would bleed through to the other page sometimes. It just behaved very strange. The freckling was probably the worst of it, and by freckling I mean that certain dots on the page would be darker over like an even wash of watercolor, which I have seen other people experience with the Illo sketchbook. And I think it would be one thing if it was consistent for every page, but it was just really hit or miss. Sometimes the watercolor laid down perfectly fine and it was smooth, versus other times you would get a lot of freckling. It would act very strangely on the paper. So I really didn't like that at first, and I kind of went back and forth with the sketchbook. When I first got it, I really didn't like the paper. Then I started liking it, and then I started disliking it again, and then towards the end of the sketchbook, I started liking it again. So it was a love-hate relationship with the sketchbook, and while it's definitely not a sketchbook that I would purchase again just because the paper really threw me off, I did enjoy working with this sketchbook. I do really like the size of this sketchbook. I like that it's a bound sketchbook. I like the ribbon that marks off your page. I really found it a lot of fun working in a square sketchbook, so I think I'll try stuff like that in the future. But like, most importantly, working in a bound sketchbook was so beneficial for me, and it was so enjoyable to work with. This is, I think, the first bound sketchbook that I have ever had. I've wanted to try one for a while. I just thought it would be something different versus a spiral bound sketchbook, and it's like a night and day difference for me. I know everyone has their own preferences, so you might not feel the same way about bound sketchbooks as I do, but it was just like so nice to be able to work from left to right on a spread without having to stop in the middle. Because when it comes to spiral bound sketchbooks for me, I always feel like I have a really awkward amount of space left over after making a drawing or a couple of drawings on that page. But when it comes to a bound sketchbook, I can just move from left to right. I don't have to worry about stopping in the middle. I can make just something go over that space. And I feel like for my sketchbook process, for my drawing process, it was just so nice working with a bound sketchbook. And honestly, I don't think I'll ever go back to a spiral sketchbook. I might pick one up here and there, but I really don't see myself going back to a spiral sketchbook for my main sketchbook for a long time, if like ever. I don't want to say ever because I might change my mind, but like the experience I had just from working in a bound sketchbook was like so nice. That was definitely my favorite aspect of this sketchbook, and like I said, I've never had a bound sketchbook before, so like that was just a very nice experience. I also, in the middle of the sketchbook, went really ham with my Tombow dual brush markers. I started using them again. I picked up some pastel colors, and I just fell in love with working with these markers again. It's been a really long time since I first bought my Tombow markers. I bought a couple sets and I played with them here and there, but they weren't really a main supply. But I found a way. I really like coloring with these markers, and it's very colorful and it's bright and it's really fun to do. And I used them so much once I discovered this, and that's what you end up seeing for a really long time. These are all done, well, not all of them, but most of them are done with the Tombow dual brush markers. I just had a lot of fun using them. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I did play with a lot of mediums in this sketchbook. The Illo sketchbook itself is really big. I think it has like 60 pages or something like that, so this is a pretty large sketchbook, but I'm really proud of myself because I was reaching for supplies that I hadn't touched in a while, or supplies that I don't use often. Like, I used my Copic markers, which I don't use super often anymore. I used my Prismacolor colored pencils towards the end of the sketchbook, which I haven't touched in a really long time. Just a bunch of stuff that I don't normally use, I started using in this sketchbook, and overall, I had a lot of fun working on this sketchbook. This is actually probably the least amount of pressure I've ever put on myself for a sketchbook. I know it's just a sketchbook, but I definitely know I'm not alone when I say sometimes you just feel like you can only put what you would consider to be good art in a sketchbook, and if it's something bad, it just makes you want to like rip it out and throw it away. But with this sketchbook, I didn't really find myself ever having that issue. I know there's some things that I don't like in this sketchbook, but for the most part, I think I was more focused on trying to make the spreads look cohesive and just organized really nicely, because that's something that I've personally really been wanting to focus on lately. And I think focusing on that alone made me not really care whether or not the drawings on the page were like what I consider to be good art or bad art. There's a lot of things that I don't like, but at the same time, the way the pages are structured, the way the spreads are structured, how like full and eye-catching and enjoyable to look at they are really helps, in my eyes at least, cover up the drawings that I don't necessarily like as much. So that was really strange for me, because like I've definitely been working towards enjoying my sketchbook work more and not being super hard on myself, especially when it comes to sketchbook work. And like by far this was like a no pressure sketchbook for me, which is really, really nice, because especially since like the Illo sketchbook isn't super expensive, but it's still like a $20 sketchbook that doesn't have the like most high-end paper in it. It's still really nice paper, but it's not like fancy watercolor paper or anything like that, so it's just not like the nicest paper. I feel weird saying that because that makes it sound like it's bad paper. It's just not the most like fancy paper that's out there. So I would not consider this to be the cheapest sketchbook, because like you can go to Michael's and get like a Canson mixed media sketchbook that's a fairly decent size with a coupon on top of it, and it ends up being way cheaper. But you know what I'm saying. But like I said, I did have so much fun playing with this sketchbook. I never set out dates of when I want to finish sketchbooks. I don't put that restriction on myself. I know some people are like, okay, I want to finish this sketchbook in X amount of time and this sketchbook in X amount of time, but I just kind of work in my sketchbook and do what I want. I try to stay constricted to working with one sketchbook at a time. That way I can finish them faster, because I don't like to be working on one for too long, and especially since recently I've been kind of bouncing around with working with different kinds of paper. I don't want to be stuck with one sketchbook for a really long time. But I am really proud of myself for being able to finish this one over the course of exactly 6 months, because I didn't really think I would, especially since like there were certain periods of time within the sketchbook that I didn't draw anything for like a couple weeks at a time. Especially when I moved, I did not find myself drawing for quite some time before I actually got back into it, so it has been a wild ride in that sense. But I am really proud of pretty much everything that's in this sketchbook. I really like the cover, and like really enjoying the cover. That in of itself is really enjoyable, and there are a lot of illustrations within this sketchbook that I'm really proud of. I've definitely been trying lately to not do all of my drawings inside of a sketchbook. I want to work on like loose sheets of paper and stuff, but either way, I still really enjoy working out of a sketchbook. It's just nice to have everything organized and put together. That way I don't have a ton of loose pieces of paper floating here and there. It's also really nice to have everything organized chronologically, because I personally really like working chronologically in my sketchbooks. I know some people bounce back and forth, but that's just my preference. And also towards the end of the sketchbook, there is a lot of Naruto fan art, because I've been watching Naruto a lot lately, and that's like all I wanted to draw and all I want to draw, and it's gonna be like that for a while, so lots of Naruto stuff to come. But then we're coming close to the end of the sketchbook. If you're interested, I do have a playlist on my channel of a bunch of other sketchbook tour videos that I've made. I have them going back for the sketchbooks I've used for the past couple of years here, so there is a handful of other sketchbook tour videos if you are interested. I will leave some kind of link or something to that in the description box. If I can put it in a little info card, I'll try to do that too. I don't know if that's a thing for playlists because I've never done that before, but that is the end of the sketchbook. There's a little pocket at the back of the Illo sketchbook, which is really nice. I really like having pockets. Normally I have more in pockets, but all I have in this one is swatches of my Tombow markers, so that's kind of boring compared to what it could be, which is more stuff. But that is it for this sketchbook. Like I said, I am really happy with it, but I will not be purchasing another Illo sketchbook in the near future. I think this was it for me. And then I do have a couple of clips about the freckling that I mentioned earlier in the video. This is just regular watercolors, so as you can see there's tiny dots. That was not done intentionally, that's just how the paper reacted with the watercolors. But what's really weird about it is that it's super inconsistent, because in the next couple clips there is no freckling and it's in the same paper in the same sketchbook, so it was just a little strange in that aspect, because it showed up here and there, and then in other places it decided it didn't want to show up. So that was like my main complaint with the sketchbook. I don't know, it's not a huge deal, but it really threw me off for a really long time. But regardless, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. I will have another sketchbook tour video sometime. We'll see if it takes 6 months again. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.